The Famitsu sales charts are in, the damage control is in full swing, and people are trying to deny reality. But it is now officially confirmed. We are now past the speculation phase, and we are now in pure hard fact. And we can say, with no doubt at all, that Pikmin 4 has outsold Final Fantasy 16 in Japan. And it's only been like a week. We don't know what the lifetime sales are going to be. We don't know if it's going to have legs. We don't know like what things are going to look like. A month later. Like I don't know. But like, there's no denying that like Pikmin 4 is the best-selling title in the series. That Nintendo's most niche in-house developed property is outselling Final Fantasy, Square Enix's cash cow. Right? That's how bad things have gotten. Like that's how bad being a PlayStation exclusive is in 2023, where you can release something like Final Fantasy 16, like something that's designed to sell PlayStations. The next big thing from Final Fantasy, you can put out something like this. You can do anything you want with it. You can put it out there, and no matter what happens, people are going to complain. And what it boils down to is that like everything about this release has been a disaster, from like the promotional period to like the general design, the concept, the lack of creativity, the gaslighting, trying to Yoshi P doing interviews talking about how he's been bullied by gamers online, trying to garner sympathy from the gaming press. Like fuck Yoshi P, by the way. If I didn't have any strong feelings on him before this happened, but now that I've seen how he handles like a minor setback, like a game not being the next big thing, like I have no respect for him at all. Right? Just how dare people not like my game? How dare people like criticize it for not being an RPG, for not being like what they expected from Square Enix? Like how dare they have an opinion about my game? Like that is legit the way he's acting right now. He is acting like a petulant child about the fact that he's not being worshipped the way he expected. And for the past 10 years, this has been the guy that people have been hyping up as being the next big thing from Square Enix, right? This is the guy that people say saved Final Fantasy 14. This is the guy that was like I remember like the first thing that people used to try to pretend to be excited for Final Fantasy 16 was this idea that like, ooh, it's going to take place in 14's universe, and ooh, it's going to have Yoshi P at the helm. Fuck Yoshi P. He is a complete fraud, and not someone that I could take seriously. He's no different than Kojima. He's no different than Inafune. He's no different than Yuji Naka. All of these people are complete posers. Anyone with real talent has just gone over to Nintendo, right? The Squaresoft guys, the guys who worked on Mario RPG, they moved on, made Mario and Luigi. People who worked on the original Mana games, they worked on Ever Oasis, which is a great 3DS hidden gem on the 3DS, by the way. Like you have, people like Fujibayoshi. A lot of people don't know this. Like his name is out there right now as the director of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. He is now considered up there with Anoma in relevancy in regards to like the big Zelda properties. He's the guy who helmed two of the biggest Zelda games ever, right? This guy is like a major player in the franchise right now. He started at Capcom, right? Like I know he directed Minish Cap. I think he switched over to Nintendo at some point, and he directed Skyward Sword, a game that was reviled by the fans who tried saying it was the worst Zelda ever and that this guy was a complete fraud. But what happened? You know, like over a decade of great games later, we got this guy is now a household name among Zelda fans. Like he is someone who deserves respect. You have like so many people at Nintendo who are just underappreciated right now, who haven't really taken the spotlight because Nintendo doesn't really emphasize these creative minds um, the way that other companies do. And rightfully so, I think, because I think we've seen this. Sean Malmstrom coined this phrase, like the game god phenomenon, where like these creators, people like John Romero, Carmack, Schaefer, uh, Phil Fish, I suppose, Warren Spector, Unafune, Naka, like all of these guys. Kojima probably being the premier example. Like these guys who just get a little bit of media attention, a little bit of coverage. They get like the they are referred to as the creators of these games, and they start acting like they're celebrities. They start acting like they're hot shit, that they're indispensable, and that they can do whatever they want. And this results in all sorts of things. Yuji Naka going around firing people because for arbitrary reasons to preserve his own power at Sega, which destroyed the company. You have like Inafune like playing hardball with Capcom, with like dumping a bunch of money into Lost Planet, which basically almost sunk the company by 2013. You have like Kojima and like the whole like taking control at Konami thing, becoming vice president there. Having more power and authority than the family who runs the company, and like running the company and its IPs into the ground. Right? You have these people who are just given way too much control, when really, like, usually their successes were the result of a team effort of a lot of talented individuals coming together. And I think Miyamoto, Anoma, Nintendo in general kind of understands this, because Miyamoto will always like openly say that like, I didn't make these games, we made these games, right? Like, he always gives a lot of credit to the teams, right? And I think that attitude's kind of trickled down to a lot of these other Nintendo staff. People like Anoma, people like Iwata, I'm sure did this, like where they treat all of their underlings, all of their employees with a lot of respect, right? They understand that like everybody is a big part of what makes this company Nintendo and what makes it what it is. And I love every single one of Nintendo's 5,000 employees. I have deep respect for them and the things they put out and the things they do. But Square Enix, in its declining years, um, they've been trying everything they possibly can to have like the next big like rockstar game developer, right? After Nomura like went off the deep end with like Kingdom Hearts 3, they've been desperately trying to find someone else, and they tried putting forward no Yoshi P, and in his first major project, right? Like the first game where they let him like, okay, this is a real mainline Final Fantasy game. Go out there and make us a bunch of money. He completely blew it. Like there's no denying this. Is that like he was given like full authority and control. He was able to do whatever he wanted, and he came up with like absolute crap. Right? Everything that people love about JRPGs has been stripped away. There's no party system. There's no great story. There's no memorable combat. There's no interesting mechanics. Like, I think side quests are pointless. It's more of an action game than anything else. Like, not a very good one at that. Like, people who love Final Fantasy are just playing this game, like, or looking at it and just going like, yeah, this isn't what I wanted from Final Fantasy. And I think people have been like feeling this way for a long time, since 12 since 10.2 at the very latest. And I think this is probably going to be the death nail for the franchise. Like, if Pikmin 4 is outselling Final Fantasy 16 in its home country, like, I don't think there's any hope. Like, Final Fantasy 7R 2 is not going to salvage the brand. If anything, I think the first part of Final Fantasy 7R like tanked that brand as well. Specifically, Final Fantasy 7 is almost its entirely separate brand for Final Fantasy. If you weren't aware, um, we saw this happen. Like we've seen, like, it's so bizarre thinking in like a 3-year time span. We went from like Final Fantasy 7R being hyped up as the next big thing, and Square Enix has like put out one of the best games of the year, to just seriously talking about their bankruptcy, seriously talking about them. Wow, they seriously killed their brand. And I want people to remember, like, going into this, like, people thought that Street Fighter 6 was going to compete with Tears of the Kingdom. Like, people thought Final Fantasy 16 was going to compete with Tears of the Kingdom. They thought that the PlayStation 5 was going to like shoot upward in scale sales, and like Tears of the Kingdom would be the last major game on Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo would be putting out a new piece of hardware imminently because, ooh, it's too underpowered. Ooh, they can't compete with these high-end games on their little gaming tablet. But that's not what happened, all right? Instead, Tears of the Kingdom has, in all likelihood, probably already outsold Elden Ring in like half the time. We, in all likelihood, like, we're seeing Pikmin 4 like soar past Final Fantasy 16. We're in all likelihood, like, we're seeing like these games are supposedly the mark of a declining Switch selling millions of units. And it's gotten to the point now with seeing the Switch is still at the top of the charts, and like the sales numbers for the games, and seeing like how things are going along. Like, why exactly would I ever want to play a PS5 when I can just get a Switch or play on the Switch I already have and get all kinds of new crazy games that are better than the stuff we're getting now. Like, it's so strange. Like, I had more fun playing Final Fantasy 1 on Switch than I ever would have playing Final Fantasy 16, right? Like, if you're interested in Final Fantasy, like, you have dozens of better games to play, right? I think that's the long and short of it. Is that, like, if you're already a Final Fantasy fan, you understand like what the high bar the series set, and if the new game doesn't interest you, you don't have to buy it. You can just go back and play 6 again. You can like do, play the Final Fantasies you never got around to playing. You could like try some of the spin-offs. You could try like, some side series, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Romancing Saga, Dragon Quest. There are so many other alternatives to classic Final Fantasy that, Square Enix cannot simply just coast off the brand name Final Fantasy anymore. Right? We're at the point now where people are simply getting their turn-based Japanese RPGs elsewhere. And what's more, I don't think people even miss Final Fantasy that much because the brand has been dead for a long time. It's kind of like how Rareware like still exists after like the after the Microsoft acquisition, and they stopped producing like good games and they immediately started producing crap like Grab by the Ghoulies, Perfect Dark Zero, Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which I played recently for the first time a while back. You know, they still kept putting out games. They were still Rareware. Like nothing changed. Like in a lot of ways from the developer standpoint, but because they lost that critical Nintendo support, because they lost Miyamoto, because like they thought they could do better with Microsoft, like the company just immediately just tanked and has never been able to recover, in spite of what fanboys tell you about Sea of Thieves and what these companies are doing. So I think we're in the this is not the beginning of a new era because this has been something that's been going on since 2017. I've warned you for the past several years, since 2013, that the third party monopoly, right? The Sony like funded third party like cabal, like paying to have Nintendo games not support Nintendo hardware, paying for third parties to support PlayStation. Like I told you, I warned you this was going to blow up in your face. I told you this was going to be a disaster. Like the games would get worse and they would start doing poorly and it would drive a lot of these companies out of business. And my predictions were 100% true. Like when it comes to Nintendo, like things are better than ever, right? We're in a new golden age period for Nintendo. But when it comes to everyone else, we are seeing a collapse of the industry. It is straight up dying and nobody wants to admit it. Like Ubisoft, when was the last time you heard anyone talk about Ubisoft? Like it's crazy how like these companies that like 10 years ago were seen as like major powerhouses and like required to make your console successful are just falling by the wayside one after another. And nobody notices or cares because they're too busy trying to convince you that the Switch is dying and the Switch 2 is on the horizon. Like Bayonetta 2, Shin Megami Tensei 5, Astral Chain, Batten Kaitos Ordinance. Ooh, those are all coming on PC this summer. Like, even though there's no evidence for any of that, right? like Bayonetta 2 has been like rumored to be coming to PC for like 10 years at this point. Still hasn't happened. Bloodborne has been rumored to be coming to PlayStation PC for the past 10 years, and it still hasn't happened. Well, 8 years, but almost a decade, right? Like it's so strange seeing these people seriously come out and like seriously act like that would be some big blow against Nintendo if these kind of like niche properties suddenly jump to like PC. Like we saw what happened with the Wonderful 101 when it like jumped platform. When it jumped platforms, nobody bought or played it. Like it is a complete disaster on Steam. Like people don't play games on Steam, period. But like it was not worth the time and effort to port something like the Wonderful 101 to Steam, right? Like they were better off staying where the real gamers were on Nintendo hardware, and I think more and more like the real developers are going to have to face facts, right? Like I don't know if like games like Golf Story or like Sports Story or whatever get ported to other consoles, but like I think there are quite a few like exclusive titles for Nintendo Switch from third parties that are actually doing way better than I think anybody would have expected. I think Operation Raincoat has done fairly well for itself. Pikmin 4 is the best selling title in the series already. You of course you had like Tears of the Kingdom being like such a monumental success, like and Super Mario Bros. Wonder is going to be phenomenal, and I really have to wonder if we're going to see like Metal Gear Solid, the collection Volume One, do best on Switch specifically. That'll be really interesting if this traditionally PlayStation exclusive franchise makes the jump to Switch and actually does better on Switch than it does on PS5. That might be like a really good demonstration of just how bad things are right now. And I don't want to like guarantee that's going to happen because I don't know like what I don't really care, but like because Metal Gear is a dead IP, but like the fact that we're even talking about this, that we are even like speculating that this is a possibility, it really just goes to show you just how bad things are right now for PlayStation, for like the developers in general, for like all of these people who have spent their entire careers trying to destroy Nintendo. Like people have died trying to destroy Nintendo. It has been like such a weird journey. And honestly, like one of the reasons I was so like I was considering like stopping doing YouTube until just recently is because like I felt there was no purpose for the channel anymore. Like how often can I keep saying that like PlayStation sucks, it's going to die, here's why, all these games are terrible, like Nintendo is superior. Like how many times can I make the same video over and over again? But like there's always new things to talk about, there's always news to cover, there's always things to talk about, and I have my audience who I'm very very grateful for everything you've done for me. Thank you very much. I just can't like I don't think I don't think I'll be going anywhere anytime soon. Right? Because I gotta see this like play out in real time. I gotta see like just how many brands die off, how many like reboots they try, how many like direct to HBO Max like film TV series they produce. I gotta talk about like things. There are so many like it's gonna be like a long hard road until like PlayStation as a console brand is just completely dead and forgotten. And even afterward, I think we're gonna see like this 20-year period where much like Sega fans, PlayStation fans are gonna like adamantly like mourn the loss of PlayStation and say that we lost like a titan in the industry when really it was never all that special. And really, if PlayStation never existed, we would probably all be better off anyway. I I uh I think the gaming industry is improving. I do. When the game I'm most upset about this year is like Pikmin 4 for like basically being Pikmin 2 too. Nintendo is doing well, right? Like when the worst thing I have to say about Fire Emblem Engage is that like well it didn't sell as much as Three Houses. Like Nintendo is doing well, all right? Like it just feels like everything we're seeing now with these people like desperately trying to say like oh Final Fantasy 16 didn't bomb, oh it's going to compete with Tears of the Kingdom, oh it'll totally outsell Pikmin 4. It's all just like flailing around, like it's all just a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about, who are just trying to pretend it's the 90s, right? Like trying to pretend that like they can still get away with saying that like oh A Link to the Past is the only Zelda game I've ever finished, right? Like still trying to pretend as if emulators are some big thing that like invalidates the entire Switch library. Like when you get right down to it, Final Fantasy 16 is not just like the death of Final Fantasy. It's not just the death of Square Enix. It's not just the death of PlayStation. It's essentially an indication of how the anti-Nintendo bias in the industry is dying. It is still prevalent. It is still there. It still exists, but it is nowhere near as prominent as it was 10 years ago. Like the days of people whining and crying about Nintendo for doing absolutely nothing are long over.